Have you ever walked across a field at dusk and felt something beneath your feet? Something moving, breathing, reaching up from below? The plantation fields of Louisiana hold secrets darker than the soil that feeds them. Secrets that have been buried for generations, waiting to be unearthed. What would you do if you discovered that the ground you've walked on your entire life was actually a tomb? Before we continue with today's horrifying case, I need to ask you to comment below where you're watching from. This channel needs your support to continue bringing these hidden historical horrors to light. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps us uncover more of these forgotten terrors that mainstream history wants to keep buried. The discovery was made on April 17, 1856, when a severe storm washed away portions of topsoil at the Whispering Willow Plantation in St. Martin Parish, Louisiana. James Thibodeau, a field worker, noticed something unusual protruding from the mud as the rain subsided. What he initially mistook for exposed tree roots turned out to be something far more disturbing: iron chains, rusted but intact, disappearing into the dark earth. "I've seen many strange things in my 43 years working these fields," Thibodeau later stated in his testimony to local authorities, "but nothing prepared me for what we found that day. Those chains seemed to pulse with the rain, like they were alive somehow. I should have left them buried. Lord forgive me, I should have just walked away." Thibodeau reported his discovery to Elijah Montgomery, the plantation overseer, who organized a small team to investigate. The excavation began the following morning, with Montgomery personally supervising the work. What started as a curious anomaly quickly evolved into a scene of incomprehensible horror. By midday, the workers had uncovered a narrow shaft leading vertically into the earth, lined with ancient brick and mortar. The chains extended downward, disappearing into the darkness below. After securing ropes and lanterns, Montgomery sent 2 men down to investigate: Samuel Reynolds and Frederick Washington, both experienced workers who had helped construct the plantation's extensive drainage systems. According to the official record filed with the St. Martin Parish Courthouse, Reynolds and Washington descended approximately 17 feet before reaching the bottom of the shaft. What they encountered was a small underground chamber, roughly 8 feet square, with earthen walls reinforced by cypress beams. In the center of this subterranean room were 2 skeletal remains, female, chained together at the ankles, wrists, and necks. The sight was unholy, Washington later recounted. They weren't just chained to each other, but to the very walls themselves, like they'd been meant to hold something up or hold something in. And the strangest thing, there was no door or passage into that room except for the hole we'd just dug. It was as if someone had built the chamber around them, then filled in the entrance. Who would do such a thing? And why? Montgomery immediately contacted local authorities, and by evening, Sheriff William Devereaux arrived with the parish doctor, Thomas Bennett. Upon examining the scene, Dr. Muchiba Bennett estimated that the remains had been interred for at least 30 years, possibly longer. The lack of any significant decomposition of fabric and personal effects was attributed to the unusual dryness of the chamber and the high clay content of the surrounding soil. The skeletal remains were determined to be those of 2 women, approximately in their early 20s at time of death. They were positioned facing each other, kneeling, their foreheads almost touching in what Dr. Bennett described as an eternal confrontation. Both women were dressed in the remnants of what appeared to be fine clothing from the late 18th century, suggesting they were not slaves or servants, but women of some social standing. Most disturbing of all were the items found with them. Each woman wore a silver locket around her neck, still intact after decades underground. When opened, each locket contained a small portrait, but not of themselves or loved ones as might be expected. Each locket held a painted miniature of the other sister, with their eyes scratched out using some sharp implement. "I've performed hundreds of examinations in my career," Dr. Bennett wrote in his official report, "but never have I encountered such a deliberate arrangement of human remains. The positioning, the chains, the defaced portraits all suggest this was not a burial but a ritual of some kind. These women were not simply killed, they were condemned." The discovery quickly became the subject of intense speculation throughout St. Martin Parish and beyond. Local newspapers reported on the chained sisters of Whispering Willow, though most accounts focused more on the macabre aspects than investigative details. The New Orleans Picayune sent a correspondent, Catherine Lawson, who spent 3 weeks researching the case. Lawson's investigation led her to the parish records office, where she discovered property deeds showing that before the establishment of Whispering Willow Plantation in 1823, the land had belonged to the Deschamps family, a once prominent French Creole household whose influence in the region had mysteriously waned in the early 19th century. Through further research into church records and private correspondence, Lawson uncovered evidence suggesting the skeletal remains likely belonged to twin sisters Evangeline and Emmeline Deschamps, who had disappeared in the spring of 1798. Their disappearance had caused a brief stir in local society, but interest had quickly faded as the family claimed the young women had been sent to relatives in France. From a journal kept by Father Antoine Leblanc, the parish priest from 1786 to 1810, Lawson found troubling entries regarding the Deschamps twins. March 3, 1798, visited the Deschamps estate today at Madame Deschamps' insistence. The situation with the twins grows worse. Evangeline refuses to be in the same room as her sister, claiming Emmeline has been replaced by something wearing her face. Emmeline, meanwhile, insists Evangeline has been conspiring with dark forces to steal her identity and her betrothed. I attempted to counsel them separately, but their delusions seem fixed. I recommended prayer and separation for a time. March 17, 1798. Troubling developments at the Deschamps household. Servants report hearing the twins speaking in unison during the night, though they are kept in separate wings of the house. Marie, the head housemaid, claims to have entered Evangeline's room at dawn to find both sisters standing at the window, holding hands, staring out at the fields. When she gasped in surprise, they turned in perfect synchronization, but said nothing. When Madame Deschamps investigated moments later, Emmeline was discovered in her own room across the house, apparently asleep. I fear something unholy has taken root here. April 2, 1798, called urgently to the Deschamps estate after servants discovered strange markings carved into the floor beneath the twins' beds. Identical patterns in both rooms, despite the sisters having no contact with each other. The markings appear to be some form of sigil or symbol unknown to me, though they bear similarities to certain forbidden voodoo practices. When questioned, neither sister acknowledged creating the markings. Both spoke in the same measured tone, claiming, "The binding has begun and cannot be undone." I have recommended to Monsieur Deschamps that specialists from New Orleans be consulted. The final entry regarding the twins came on April 28, 1798. The Deschamps sisters are gone. The family claims they have been sent to relatives in France for their health and education, but rumors among the household staff tell a different story. Madame Deschamps' eyes are hollow with grief, though she maintains the fiction of her daughter's departure. Monsieur Deschamps has taken to drinking heavily and avoids all mention of his children. I am troubled by what may have occurred, but when I attempted to discuss the matter further, I was firmly told my services were no longer required at the estate. More disturbing still, the sugar cane in the fields surrounding the house has grown at an unnatural rate this season, already towering despite being newly planted. The workers whisper that the soil has been fed with something unholy. Lawson's investigation took a darker turn when she interviewed elderly residents of the parish. Josephine Boudreau, 97 years old in 1856, and a former house servant at the Deschamps estate, provided the most troubling account. "Those girls weren't right from birth," Boudreau told Lawson. "Came into this world holding hands. I was there. Wouldn't let go of each other, not even when the midwife tried to separate them for cleaning. And when they finally were pulled apart, they both stopped breathing until they were placed together again. Madame Deschamps was terrified of them, though she never said it aloud." Boudreau went on to describe how the twins developed normally through childhood, unusually close even for twins, until their 16th year, when something changed. They started fighting, terrible screaming matches that would shake the house. Each accused the other of stealing something precious, though what it was, they never said. Then they'd be found sleepwalking, always walking toward each other from opposite ends of the house, meeting in the central hall, standing forehead to forehead without speaking. According to Boudreau, the situation reached a breaking point after the twins' 18th birthday, when both became engaged to the same man, though neither had told the other of the arrangement. It was Monsieur Claude Beaumont, a sugar merchant from New Orleans. Handsome man, wealthy too. Somehow he'd been courting both girls in secret, giving them identical promises, identical rings. When they discovered his deception, something broke in them. Not in the way you'd expect. They didn't blame him or each other. Instead, they both smiled in that same terrible way and said together, "The circle is complete." What happened next, Boudreau would only describe in fragmented whispers. She claimed that on the night of April 23, 1798, a small group of trusted servants, led by Monsieur Deschamps himself, carried two struggling, identical figures into the fields. The twins were drugged but conscious, chanting in unison in a language Boudreau didn't recognize. They had prepared a place, she said, her voice barely audible, a room beneath the earth. The master had ordered it built in secret, deep among the cane fields. The walls were marked with symbols drawn in the twins' own blood. They said it was the only way to contain what was happening, the only way to keep it from spreading beyond the sisters. When pressed for details on what it was, Boudreau would only shake her head. "Some hungers can't be named without feeding them," she insisted. "But I will tell you this. After they were sealed away, the crops grew like never before. Year after year, the richest, sweetest cane anyone had seen." The Deschamps sold the plantation 5 years later and moved to France. They never returned to Louisiana. Catherine Lawson's investigation hit a roadblock when she attempted to locate records of Claude Beaumont, the alleged fiancé of both sisters. No merchant by that name appeared in New Orleans records from the period, nor was there any evidence of his existence in church registries or business ledgers. It was as if he had been erased from history or had never existed at all. The current owner of Whispering Willow Plantation in 1856, Harrison Crawford, a Massachusetts businessman who had purchased the property in 1842, expressed shock at the discovery. "I had no knowledge of any structures beneath the fields," he stated for the record. "The previous owners made no mention of anything unusual about the property, though I recall thinking the price was surprisingly reasonable for land with such consistently high yields." Crawford permitted the investigation, but insisted on having the chamber filled in and the remains reburied once authorities had completed their examination. "This is still a working plantation," he reasoned. "We can't have workers afraid to tend the fields because of some ancient tragedy." Sheriff Devereaux agreed to Crawford's request, though he insisted on having the remains examined more thoroughly before reburial. The bodies were transported to New Orleans, where Dr. Elias Montgomery, a specialist in forensic examination, conducted a more detailed analysis. Dr. Montgomery's findings added several disturbing elements to the case. First, the condition of the bones suggested the women had been alive when interred in the underground chamber. Scratch marks on the inside of the chains and on the earthen walls indicated desperate attempts to escape. More troubling still, the arrangement of the remains suggested the women had ultimately turned toward each other in their final moments, their foreheads touching, hands clasped despite the chains. "The evidence suggests they survived for some time in that chamber," Dr. Montgomery wrote. "Possibly days, even weeks. There were traces of what appeared to be a water source, a small clay vessel positioned to catch moisture seeping through a crack in the ceiling, but no evidence of food. These women were meant to endure, at least for a while. One must wonder why." The most inexplicable aspect of Dr. Montgomery's findings concerned the sisters' teeth. Each woman's mouth contained not just her own teeth, but several belonging to her sister, as if they had exchanged them somehow. "The dental arrangement defies natural explanation," he noted. "It appears that at some point they extracted teeth from each other and inserted them into their own gums. The procedure would have been excruciatingly painful and almost impossible to perform under the circumstances of their confinement. Yet the evidence is undeniable. After the examination was complete, the remains were returned to St. Martin Parish for reburial. Sheriff Devereaux opted for consecrated ground, rather than returning them to the underground chamber, arranging for a quiet ceremony at the small cemetery behind St. Martin's Church. Father Thomas Garnier performed the rites, though he later confessed to feeling a profound unease throughout the ceremony. "As I spoke the words of committal," Father Garnier later wrote to Bishop Laurent in New Orleans, "I could have sworn I heard whispering beneath the coffins, not from any living person present, but from within the boxes themselves. A rapid, urgent exchange, as if the sisters were sharing secrets even in death." Several others present commented on the same phenomenon, though we could discern no words in the sounds. The strange case might have ended there, consigned to local legend, if not for a series of disturbing incidents that followed the reburial. Within weeks, workers at Whispering Willow began reporting unusual phenomena in the fields, particularly near the site where the underground chamber had been discovered. Nathan Miller, a field hand, described seeing two women in white dresses, standing among the cane at dusk. They were holding hands and swaying slightly, though there was no wind. When I called out, thinking they were trespassers, they turned to face me in perfect unison. Their faces, I couldn't make out any features, just smooth, blank skin where faces should have been. I ran and didn't look back. Similar sightings were reported by at least 7 other workers throughout May and June of 1856. Crawford initially dismissed the accounts as superstition, fueled by knowledge of the grim discovery, but he became more concerned when the phenomena began affecting the crop itself. Sections of sugarcane near the excavation site grew at twice the normal rate, reaching full maturity months ahead of schedule. The accelerated growth might have been welcomed as a boon, except for the quality of the cane itself. When harvested and processed, the sugar produced was described as having an unusual crimson tint, and a taste that plantation manager Thomas Wilson described as sweet at first, then deeply bitter, with a metallic aftertaste reminiscent of blood. Crawford ordered the affected cane burned and the area replanted, but the new crop exhibited the same properties. More concerning, the abnormal growth began to spread to adjacent fields, as if following some pattern invisible to the eye. By August 1856, nearly 1/5 of the plantation's crop displayed the same characteristics. Desperate to understand what was happening, Crawford consulted Marie Laveau, the famous voodoo priestess from New Orleans. Though well into her 60s by this time, Laveau's reputation as a spiritual advisor remained undiminished. After visiting the plantation and walking the grounds, particularly near the burial site and the fields with abnormal growth, Laveau provided a troubling assessment. "What sleeps beneath these fields was never meant to be disturbed," she reportedly told Crawford. "The chains were not to keep those women in, but to keep something else out, or perhaps to keep something contained within them. By breaking the seal of their tomb, you have interrupted a ritual that was meant to last in perpetuity." According to Crawford's personal journal, Laveau explained that the Deschamps twins had likely been practitioners of a particular form of folk magic, one that dealt with the concept of spiritual twinning, the belief that twins shared not just physical similarities, but a single soul divided between two bodies. "In some traditions," Crawford wrote, recording Laveau's words, "twins are considered naturally magical beings, their divided nature making them ideal vessels for certain energies that would destroy a single person. The positioning of the sisters, their chained state, the exchanged teeth, all suggest a binding ritual of tremendous power. They weren't victims, they were participants, willing sacrifices to contain something they had summoned but couldn't control." Laveau allegedly refused to specify what that something might be, saying only that some hungers are best left unnamed. The phrase echoed what Josephine Boudreau had told Catherine Lawson months earlier, suggesting a deliberate concealment of knowledge passed down through generations. Laveau did, however, offer advice on addressing the immediate problem. She provided Crawford with specific instructions for a ritual to reinstate the boundary that had been broken. The procedure required the creation of a circle of iron filings mixed with salt around the entire affected area, the sacrifice of 2 identical white hens at the cardinal points, and the burial of specific items at the center of the disturbance, including strands of hair from identical twin girls, which proved difficult to obtain. Crawford, despite his New England upbringing and initial skepticism, followed Laveau's instructions precisely. The ritual was performed on the night of the autumn equinox, September 22, 1856. Crawford's journal entry from the following morning reveals both relief and lingering unease. "The work is done, though I cannot claim to understand it. The signs of improvement were immediate. The strange luminescence that had been visible in the fields at night has subsided, and this morning several workers reported that the affected cane appears to be returning to its normal state." Miss Laveau's methods, whatever their basis, seem to have been effective. I find myself reluctant to question the means when the ends are so clearly beneficial to the plantation. Still, I cannot shake the feeling that we have not solved the problem so much as postponed it. Miss Laveau herself said as much before departing, warning that the binding would hold for a time, but not forever. When I pressed her on how long we might expect the effects to last, she would only say, "Until they find each other again." I did not ask who they referred to, the sisters, or whatever they had contained. Perhaps they are one and the same now. I have instructed my overseer to maintain a small monthly offering at the site of the original chamber. Nothing so overt as to cause alarm among the workers, just a simple pouring of sugar and rum into the soil. Miss Laveau suggested this would satisfy the hunger and keep the boundary strong. I find myself, a rational man of business, now engaged in what can only be described as superstitious practice. Yet after what I have witnessed these past months, I cannot dismiss the efficacy of such measures, however foreign they may be to my understanding. The strange occurrences at Whispering Willow Plantation did indeed subside following the ritual, though they never disappeared entirely. The plantation maintained its reputation for unusually abundant harvests, though visitors sometimes commented on the peculiar sweetness of Whispering Willow sugar, almost too sweet, as one New Orleans merchant noted, as if it contained something beyond mere sucrose. The most significant development came in 1872, 16 years after the original discovery, when Crawford's son Daniel, who had inherited the plantation following his father's death, ordered the construction of a new drainage system. Throughout the late 1850s and into the Civil War period, workers continued to occasionally report sightings of twin female figures among the cane fields, always at dusk or dawn, always at a distance. Workers digging near the original chamber site uncovered something unexpected. A second chamber, identical in construction to the first, but located approximately 50 yards to the east. This chamber, like the first, contained the skeletal remains of two women chained together. The positioning, the chains, even the clothing remnants matched the original discovery in every detail. Most disturbing of all, each woman wore a silver locket containing a portrait of the other with the eyes scratched out, identical to the lockets found with the first pair of remains. Daniel Crawford, unlike his father, refused to allow extensive investigation of this second discovery. He ordered the chamber sealed immediately and sold the plantation within the month to an investment company from Chicago. The new owners renamed the property Sweetwater Plantation and made no mention of its disturbing history in any of their records or promotional materials. Over the subsequent decades, ownership of the plantation changed hands multiple times. Each transition seemed to coincide with some calamity befalling the previous owner: financial ruin, unexpected death, or sudden illness. Local rumor held that the land itself was cursed, though the agricultural productivity never waned. If anything, the yields increased with each passing generation, with Sweetwater sugar commanding premium prices for its distinctive flavor. In 1924, during Prohibition, the plantation became the site of a secret distillery operation run by the Moretti family from Chicago. Workers preparing the underground space for the distilling equipment reported finding dozens of small chambers throughout the property, each containing paired skeletal remains chained together in identical positions. Rather than report these discoveries, the Moretti operation simply incorporated the chambers into their underground network, using them as storage spaces for their illicit alcohol. Victor Moretti, who oversaw the operation, kept a private journal that was discovered decades later during a police raid on the family's Chicago residence. The journal contained troubling entries regarding the Sweetwater property. March 10, 1925. The workers complain about voices in the sugarcane. Always at dusk, always women's voices speaking in unison. They say it's French, though none of them speak it well enough to understand. I've doubled their rum ration to keep them quiet. April 23, 1925. Found another chamber today while expanding the eastern tunnel. Same as all the others. Two women chained together, facing each other. Always the same position, always the same type of chains. How many are there? And who put them there? The locals won't talk about it, just cross themselves and look away when I ask. May 17, 1925. Something is happening to the product. The latest batch has that strange reddish tint again, like what happened last year. The taste is changing too. Customers in New Orleans are paying triple for it now, saying it gives them visions. I've forbidden the men from sampling it after what happened to Rodriguez. 3 days of screaming about the hungry ones before he hanged himself. June 8, 1925. They're spreading. I'm certain of it now. We mapped 23 chambers last month. Yesterday's count showed 29, all in the same pattern, radiating outward from the center of the property like the spokes of a wheel. The oldest ones are near the center, the newer ones toward the periphery. It's as if they're multiplying, or being created anew. But by whom and how, without us noticing the digging? August 23rd, 1925. I heard them myself last night, standing in the fields after midnight, checking on a shipment. Two voices speaking in perfect unison from somewhere in the darkness. The words were clear despite being in French. The binding weakens, the hunger grows. We will all be sisters soon. I'm selling this operation to Donovan next month. Let him deal with whatever unholy thing is happening here. Some profits aren't worth the cost. The Moretti operation ended with Victor's departure in September 1925. True to his word, he sold the operation to Michael Donovan, an Irish-American bootlegger from New York. Donovan's tenure at Sweetwater was brief, just 7 months before he disappeared without a trace in April 1926. The plantation returned to legitimate sugar production following the end of Prohibition, though ownership continued to change frequently. Agricultural census conducted in 1947 noted that Sweetwater Plantation had the highest yield per acre of any sugar operation in Louisiana, producing cane with an unusually high sugar content. Dr. Lawrence Merrill, a botanist from Louisiana State University who studied the Sweetwater phenomenon, wrote in his 1948 paper, "Anomalous Saccharum Growth Patterns in St. Martin Parish." The sugar cane at Sweetwater Plantation exhibits growth characteristics unlike any other variety in the region, despite being genetically identical to cane grown on adjacent properties. Soil samples reveal unusually high concentrations of iron and calcium, as well as trace elements typically associated with bone meal fertilizers, though the current owners deny using such amendments. Most curious is the root structure of the Sweetwater cane, which extends to depths of up to 15 feet, nearly 3 times the normal range for the species. These deep roots appear to form complex interconnected networks that one might be tempted to describe as deliberate patterns if found in a human construction. The question remains, what are these roots seeking at such depths, and what are they bringing back to the surface? Dr. E. Merrill's research was abruptly terminated when university funding for the project was withdrawn without explanation. His field notes from his final visit to the plantation, found among his personal effects after his suicide in 1951, contain a disturbing final entry. "They're in the cane now. I saw them at sunset, not just 2, but dozens of identical female figures, moving among the rows in perfect synchronization. When the wind blew, they swayed with the cane, indistinguishable except for their pale forms. The workers see them too, though they won't speak of it directly. The sisters are watching," one man told me when he thought no one else could hear. "They're hungry for more sisters." I asked what he meant, but he only shook his head and walked away. "Tomorrow, I'll bring ground-penetrating radar equipment to map what lies beneath these fields. I suspect the number of chambers has increased exponentially since the original discovery nearly a century ago. What began with 2 has become many, and the pattern continues to grow." The plantation operated continuously through the latter half of the 20th century, changing hands 7 more times between 1950 and 2000. Each owner maintained the sugar operation, though many expanded into tourism, capitalizing on the antebellum architecture of the main house and the property's proximity to the growing heritage tourism industry in Louisiana. Notably absent from any official tour or marketing material was mention of the chambers beneath the fields or the legend of the chained sisters. Yet the story persisted in local oral tradition, with residents of St. Martin Parish warning their children away from the edges of the Sweetwater fields, especially at dusk. "Don't listen if you hear women calling your name from the cane," went one common parental warning. The sisters are always looking for new twins to join them below. In 2007, Sweetwater Plantation was purchased by Global Agra Corporation, an international agricultural conglomerate seeking to modernize the operation and extract maximum profit from the historically productive land. The company installed Gregory Parsons as plantation manager, a 34-year-old agronomist with no knowledge of the property's dark history. Parsons' first quarterly report to corporate headquarters noted the exceptional fertility of the Sweetwater soil and the unusual vigor of the sugarcane. His scientific background led him to conduct extensive soil analysis, searching for a rational explanation for the plantation's remarkable productivity. Initial findings suggest abnormally high concentrations of organic compounds, consistent with decades of sustained biological decomposition. Parsons wrote in his report dated March 15, 2007. Nitrogen and phosphorus levels exceed standard agricultural parameters by approximately 40%, particularly in the central fields. Most curious are the iron oxide deposits found at regular intervals throughout the property, forming what appears to be a geometric pattern when mapped. I've requested ground-penetrating radar surveys to determine whether these deposits correlate with any underground structures or natural formations. Global Agra approved the survey, which was conducted in June 2007 by Terrascan Inc., a geological survey company from Houston. The resulting radar images revealed what technician Sophia Reynolds described in her report as an extensive network of small underground chambers arranged in concentric circles radiating from the central fields. The structures appear man-made, Reynolds noted, with consistent dimensions of approximately 8 feet square. We identified 78 such chambers at depths ranging from 12 to 20 feet below the surface. Their arrangement suggests deliberate placement rather than random distribution. Without excavation, we cannot determine their purpose or contents, though the regular spacing and identical dimensions indicate they were created as part of a single comprehensive project. When presented with these findings, Global Agra executives initially planned a complete excavation to determine whether the chambers might pose any structural risk to their operation. However, the discovery of historical records linking the property to a series of unexplained disappearances throughout the 19th and 20th centuries gave them pause. These records, uncovered by company legal researcher Marcus Jeffries while conducting due diligence on the property's title history, detailed a disturbing pattern. Every generation since the original discovery in 1856 had seen pairs of young women go missing in or near St. Martin Parish. The disappearances always occurred in pairs: roommates, cousins, close friends, and most frequently sisters. Between 1856 and 2000, Jeffries wrote in his confidential memo to Global Agra leadership, I've documented 43 separate incidents involving 86 women who disappeared without trace in this region. In 31 of these cases, the missing women were biological sisters. In 8 cases, they were identical twins. Most disturbing is the consistent pattern of their last known locations. All were seen near or on the Sweetwater property, often near dusk, often near the sugarcane fields. Global Agra quietly shelved the excavation plans, choosing instead to limit their operations to surface-level modernization. Parsons was instructed to focus on maximizing yield using conventional agricultural methods and to avoid any unnecessary digging beyond standard plowing depth. Despite these precautions, workers at Sweetwater began reporting unusual experiences shortly after the ground-penetrating radar survey was completed. Eduardo Vasquez, a seasonal worker who had been with the plantation for over a decade, gave the following statement to Parsons in July 2007. Something has changed in the fields. The cane talks now. Not like before. Before it was just whispers. Could have been the wind. Now it speaks clear in voices like women talking together. Always at sunset, always the same words. Join us below, become sisters with us. 3 men have quit already. They say it's brujeria, witchcraft. I stay only because my family needs the money, but I don't walk the center fields alone anymore. No one does. Parsons initially dismissed these reports as superstition, but his skepticism wavered when he began experiencing unusual phenomena himself. In his personal journal, found on his computer after his disappearance in October 2007, the following entries appear. August 3, 2007. Conducted a twilight inspection of the eastern fields today. Heard something unusual, a rhythmic sound like chains dragging through soil. Followed the sound for nearly 20 minutes, but could never quite locate the source. It seemed to move as I moved, always just beyond the next row of cane. Probably just equipment settling or animals in the undergrowth, but unsettling nonetheless. August 17, 2007. The harvested sugar has that strange reddish tint the old-timers mentioned. Lab tests show nothing unusual, chemically identical to normal sugar, yet the color persists. More concerning are the dreams I've been having, always the same. I'm walking through the cane at sunset, following 2 women in white dresses. They never turn around, but they speak to me in unison, saying they're waiting for me below. I always wake when they reach a certain spot in the central fields, a circular clearing where the cane won't grow. None of the workers will tell me why that spot remains bare. September 8, 2007. Found old records in a storage room behind the plantation office. Journal entries from previous managers dating back to the 1930s. They all describe the same phenomena: whispering in the fields, unexplained chambers discovered during routine maintenance, sugar with a reddish tint. Most wrote it off as local superstition, but their entries grow increasingly erratic over time. The final entry in each journal is always some variation of the same phrase: "I understand now, the sisters are hungry. The binding must be maintained." I should dismiss this as elaborate local folklore, but after what I've been experiencing these past weeks, I find myself unable to entirely discount it. September 22, 2007. Autumn equinox. The activity in the fields has intensified dramatically. Witness something impossible tonight: rows of cane parting on their own, forming a path leading to the central clearing. At the end of the path stood two female figures in white, holding hands. When I called out, they turned in unison and beckoned me forward. Their faces were identical, not just similar but perfect mirrors of each other. I turned to leave and found more pairs of identical women standing behind me, all with the same face as the first pair. The rational part of my mind insists this was hallucination, but I felt the touch of their hands, cold and dry like paper, as they reached for me. I ran and didn't stop until I reached my car. October 3, 2007. Found an iron key in my pocket this morning. Old, rusted, ornate. I have no memory of acquiring it. When I held it, I instantly knew what it unlocked: a door beneath the central clearing. I know this with inexplicable certainty, though I've never seen such a door. I've caught myself walking toward the clearing several times today, key in hand, before forcing myself to turn back. The urge grows stronger as evening approaches. I've called Global Agra to request immediate reassignment, citing health concerns, waiting for their response. If they haven't called by sunset, I'm leaving regardless. Some hungers can't be stopped once fed. Parsons disappeared that night. His car remained in the plantation parking lot. His apartment showed no signs of packing or planned departure. The only unusual element was a circle of salt surrounding his bed, broken in a single place, as if someone had carefully stepped over it. Global Agra appointed a new manager, Rachel Torres, who arrived in November 2007. Her tenure was marked by aggressive productivity goals and dismissal of the local legends as counterproductive superstition. Under her direction, the company began using deeper plowing techniques to prepare for a new, more robust variety of sugarcane. In December 2007, during this deeper plowing operation, workers uncovered yet another underground chamber. Unlike previous discoveries, Torres ordered a thorough documentation before sealing it. The corporate report includes photographs showing the now familiar scene: two female skeletons chained together, facing each other, lockets around their necks containing portraits with scratched-out eyes. What distinguished this chamber was its apparent age. Carbon dating of fabric remnants suggested this particular burial had occurred recently, perhaps within the past decade. More disturbing still, personal effects found with the remains included a modern wristwatch and a partially decomposed driver's license belonging to Melissa Reynolds, a 23-year-old woman who had disappeared along with her identical twin sister Miranda in 1998, exactly 200 years after the original Deschamps sisters had vanished. Torres, unlike her predecessors, did not report these findings to local authorities. Instead, she ordered the chamber sealed and instructed workers to avoid the area. Her report to Global Agra headquarters mentioned only historical artifacts of no significant value and recommended continuing operations as planned. By February 2008, the anomalies at Sweetwater had intensified. Workers reported seeing not just pairs but groups of identical women moving through the fields at dusk. The cane itself began growing in unusual patterns, forming perfect circles overnight, or bending to create walking paths that led invariably to the central clearing. Most concerning was the behavior of the sugar produced from this harvest. It dissolved in liquid to create a reddish solution that seemed to move independently, swirling in patterns similar to the arrangement of underground chambers revealed by the radar survey. Torres maintained her skeptical stance publicly, but her private communications with Global Agra executives revealed growing concern. In an email dated February 28, 2008, she wrote, "The situation at Sweetwater has become untenable. Whatever is happening here defies rational explanation. The productivity remains exceptional. We've exceeded harvest projections by 28%, but the human cost is becoming difficult to justify. 3 more workers disappeared last week. All women, all last seen heading toward the central fields at sunset, despite explicit instructions to avoid that area after dark. The chambers are multiplying. Yesterday's radar survey showed 114 distinct structures beneath our fields, compared to 78 just 8 months ago. They appear to be expanding outward from the center point, following the pattern of concentric circles established in the original formation. Without excavation, we cannot determine whether these new chambers contain remains like the others. But given the pattern of disappearances, I fear what we might find. Most disturbing is what happened last night in the processing facility. The latest batch of sugar, while chemically identical to previous harvests, exhibited impossible behavior. When left undisturbed overnight in the storage silo, it arranged itself into precise geometric patterns, matching the underground chamber layout. Security footage shows no human intervention. The sugar simply moved on its own. I recommend immediate suspension of all operations at Sweetwater and implementation of containment protocols as outlined in Appendix C of the Crisis Management Handbook. Whatever is happening here is spreading, and I cannot guarantee it will remain confined to the plantation if we continue to harvest and distribute this sugar. Global Agra's response came the following day, a terse email instructing Torres to maintain operations and contain local superstition. They dispatched a 3-person team from corporate headquarters to assess the situation firsthand, led by Dr. Eleanor Wright, the company's chief agricultural scientist. Dr. Wright and her colleagues arrived at Sweetwater on March 3, 2008. Their initial inspection appeared to confirm Torres's concerns, though Wright's approach was strictly scientific. She collected samples of the sugar, soil, and cane for analysis, and ordered a more comprehensive ground-penetrating radar survey of the entire property. The results of this survey, completed on March 5th, revealed a disturbing development. The underground chambers had indeed multiplied, now numbering 142, but more concerning was their arrangement. When mapped from above, they formed an unmistakable pattern, 2 identical human faces in profile, facing each other, their foreheads touching. Dr. Wright's team spent the night analyzing the survey results and preparing a preliminary report for corporate headquarters. According to security footage, all 3 team members left their accommodations shortly before dawn on March 6th and walked into the cane fields. They were never seen again. Torres, upon discovering their disappearance, made one final attempt to alert authorities. Her call to the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Department at 9:17 a.m. on March 6th was recorded in the dispatch log. Torres: I need to report multiple missing persons and request an immediate evacuation of Sweetwater Plantation. Dispatcher: Can you clarify the nature of the emergency, ma'am? Torres: There's something beneath the fields. It's been taking people for over 200 years. The chambers are full of twins, pairs, all arranged in the same pattern. It's hungry and it's growing. Dispatcher: Are you reporting a structural collapse or sinkhole, ma'am? Torres: No, I'm reporting something much worse. It whispers through the cane. It promises to make you a sister, to never be alone. Please, send everyone you have. We need to evacuate before sunset. Dispatcher: Ma'am, we've received similar calls from Sweetwater over the years. Is this another field worker reporting the sisters legend? Torres: This isn't legend. I've seen the chambers. I've seen what's in them. And now they're calling my name too. I can hear them even now, even in daylight. They're getting stronger. Dispatcher: Ms. Torres, please remain calm. I'll send a deputy to take a report. But please understand that... Call disconnects. The deputy dispatched to Sweetwater arrived at 10:42 a.m. to find the plantation office empty. Torres's vehicle remained in the parking lot, her coffee still warm on her desk. A search of the property revealed nothing until officers reached the central clearing in the fields. There they discovered a perfect circle of bare earth, approximately 30 feet in diameter. In the center of this circle was a trap door made of ancient wood bound with iron, standing open to reveal a descending staircase that had not been present during any previous inspection of the property. Deputy Samuel Richards was the first to approach the opening. His body camera footage, later entered into evidence, shows him descending the stairs approximately 15 feet before reaching a circular chamber much larger than those identified in previous discoveries. The walls were lined with smaller alcoves, each containing a pair of female figures chained together in the now familiar pose, facing each other, foreheads touching, hands clasped despite their chains. Richard's voice can be heard on the recording, shaking slightly as he reports, "Dispatch, I'm going to need backup and forensics at Sweetwater. I found what appears to be, I don't know how to describe this. It's some kind of underground chamber with what looks like dozens of bodies. Some appear recent. I can see modern clothing." As Richards pans the camera around the chamber, at least 40 pairs of figures are visible in the alcoves. Most are skeletal, but some appear to be in various states of decomposition, suggesting deaths occurring at different times over a long period. The most disturbing aspect of the footage comes at the 3-minute, 17-second mark, when Richards turns toward what appears to be a central altar or platform. On this platform are 2 female figures in white dresses, holding hands and swaying slightly. They appear to be alive, though their movements are strangely synchronized. Richards approaches cautiously, calling out, "Ma'am, are you Rachel Torres? Are you okay?" The figures turn in unison to face the camera. Both have the same face, identical in every detail, though neither resembles photographs of Rachel Torres. Their eyes are entirely white, without iris or pupil, and they speak in perfect unison. "We are the sisters. The binding weakens. The hunger grows. Soon we will all be sisters." The camera suddenly jerks as Richards turns to flee, catching a glimpse of dozens of identical pairs of women emerging from the shadows of the chamber, all with the same face as the first pair, all moving in perfect synchronization. The footage ends abruptly at this point. 3 additional officers entered the chamber after contact with Richards was lost. None emerged. When state police arrived 2 hours later with additional personnel and equipment, they found no trace of the trapdoor or underground chamber. Ground-penetrating radar showed only solid earth beneath the clearing. Global Agra officially closed Sweetwater Plantation the following week, citing environmental concerns and structural instability. The property was fenced off, and no further attempts at agriculture were made. The company's official statement referenced chemical contamination requiring long-term remediation, with no mention of the disappearances or underground discoveries. However, satellite imagery from the past decade shows something unusual happening at the abandoned plantation. The sugarcane, though no longer harvested, continues to grow in distinctive patterns visible from above. Each year the patterns become more elaborate, forming what appears to be an enormous image of 2 identical female faces, their features becoming more defined with each growing season. More concerning still are the missing persons statistics for St. Martin Parish and surrounding areas. Since the closure of Sweetwater, the rate of disappearances has not declined, but rather spread geographically. The pattern remains consistent. Women disappearing in pairs, often sisters, often after reporting hearing voices calling to them from fields or wooded areas. Most recently, in October of 2025, hikers discovered an underground chamber in Atchafalaya Basin, nearly 40 miles from Sweetwater Plantation. Inside were 2 young women, chained together, alive but unresponsive, their foreheads touching, hands clasped. When separated by medical personnel, both fell into immediate cardiac arrest, recovering only when placed facing each other again. Neither woman has spoken since their discovery, though they occasionally whisper in unison when they believe no one is listening. Hospital staff have reported hearing the same phrase repeated, "The binding weakens, the hunger grows. Soon we will all be sisters." The chamber where they were found contained something else, rows of empty alcoves, as if waiting for new occupants. Ground-penetrating radar surveys ordered by state police have identified similar chambers throughout the region, all empty, all seemingly new, all arranged in the familiar pattern of concentric circles. Whatever began beneath the sugar fields of Whispering Willow Plantation in 1856, or perhaps much earlier, appears to be spreading. The binding ritual that once contained it to a single location has weakened over generations. The hunger, whatever it may be, grows stronger. As night falls across the fields of Louisiana, listen carefully to the whispers in the wind. If you hear women's voices speaking in unison, calling your name, promising you'll never be alone again, run. Run and don't look back. And most importantly, hold tight to those you love, but never so tight that you begin to mirror each other too closely. For in the dark soil of St. Martin Parish, something ancient hungers for symmetry, for pairs, for the perfect reflection of self in other. It has been gathering sisters for centuries, binding them together in eternal communion beneath the earth, and its reach grows with every pair it claims. The binding weakens, the hunger grows. Soon we may all be sisters, but remember, in these darkest moments, that there is a greater power than any earthly hunger or ancient binding. Turn your heart to God and the salvation offered through Jesus Christ, for even in the blackest pits beneath the earth, His light can penetrate. Where human chains bind, divine love can free. Let us pray together for those lost beneath the fields, that their souls might find the peace that their bodies were denied. God bless you, and may you never hear the whispers of the sisters calling your name from the cane fields at dusk.